everybody, and welcome to another week of Let's Talk. I am your host, author Dre Lett. Thank you for joining me for another fun filled week where we inform, inspire, and motivate. We get you going during these tough times and beyond. So come on in the room and have a seat so we can let's talk. You guys got to stay tuned all the way to the end of the show. I have a very, very special announcement that will put a smile on your face as I am smiling as well. So make sure you stay to the end so you can hear the great announcement that I have. So, you guys, tonight is Think Like a Bank Friday. Yes, I said it. Think Like a Bank Friday. We have Sarry Ibrahim. He's a financial consultant and the founder of Financial Asset Protection. He's here to talk about how to manage good and bad debt, as well as how to bank on yourself financially by thinking like a bank. He will be on the virtual stage in just a few minutes. All right, you guys, what's hot? Oh my goodness, what's hot? What's hot? What's hot? As you hear about things about people and their relationships, you never want to hear any bad news. But unfortunately, actress Nia Long, you guys all know her from Boys in the Hood and a whole host of other movies. I love her. She's a great actress. During the last NBA Finals, she flew to Boston, was supporter of her man, her fiance, because he's the coach of the Boston Celtics, right? Oh my goodness. So his name, and I hope I don't get it wrong, but it's pronounced Almi Udoka. He is the head coach of the Boston Celtics, as I mentioned, and he has been suspended for an entire NBA season for violation of team policies, the organization announced Thursday night. His suspension was effective immediately. According to ESPN, the Athletic and Boston Globe, Udoka had a consensual relationship with a female member of the team staff. Oh my goodness. So, that had to hit me along really, really hard because I'm sure she's been with him. They have a son. They're in a long-term relationship, the whole nine. She lives in California. He lives in Boston. I guess it's one of those long distance relationships. And I'm sure she's crushed. So she released a statement today that basically said, the outpouring of love and support from family and friends in the community during this difficult time means so much to me. And I ask that my privacy be respected as I process the recent events. Above all, I am a mother and will continue to focus on my children. That's terrible. I'm sorry, guys. I know I'm not male bashing, but I'm sorry. If you got a good thing, you got a good woman supporting you still, why would you throw it away for 2 minutes, 6 minutes, whatever the physical time frame is? Why would you throw it away for a good relationship? Now you're looking at child support. Now you may be looking at other spousal support. Who knows? But I just think it's so sad. And I love Nia Long, and my thoughts and prayers go out to her. But brothers, men, all nationality, ethnicities, we got to do better. If you got a good woman, stay true to her. Stay true to her. All right. In other what's hot news, oh my goodness, you guys, this is something else. McDonald's. Yes, McDonald's, right? If you're from my genre, my generation, we all grew up eating McDonald's. McDonald's was a treat as a kid. But anyways, McDonald's will have to defend itself against a 10 billion with the B as in boy billion lawsuit from media mogul Brian Allen over allegation that the fast food chain doesn't advertise with black owned media. Wow. Good for you, Brian. Good for you. A federal court ruled last week that Allen and his company, Allen Media Group, can try to prove in court that McDonald's violated civil rights laws. Allen said in a press release that only a small portion, about $5 million of McDonald's $1.6 billion annual advertising budget goes to Black-owned media, and that the company has refused to advertise on his networks, which include the Weather Channel and Comedy TV. Wow, he's huge. He's got a lot, you guys. He also accuses McDonald's of relegating his TV networks to an African American tier that has a smaller ad budget and deprives the channels of millions of dollars in annual revenue. You know what, Byron Allen, good for you. I totally get it. Unfortunately, when are these companies going to realize that all ethnicities, buy their products, eat their foods, and so forth? Therefore, you should advertise accordingly, right? that's just the way that it should be across the board. It shouldn't be more in this area and less in that. It should just be across the board. So I'm super proud of him for doing that. That's the way it should be. Let's get fair. This is 2022, not 1952. So great job, Byron Allen. I hope all goes well for you in those court proceedings. So, you guys check in, my Let's Talk fam. Please check in and let me know where you're checking in from, where you're watching the show from. I want to know so I can give you a shout out. Um, and basically, thank you for watching. Tell me what city and the whole nine. Like I said, I want to give you a shout out. You guys mean the world to me. For those of you that are watching that are too scared to say anything, I understand. It's all good. I thank you for your support as well. But for those of you that ain't scared, give me a shout out. So we're going to take a quick break and take a listen to a message from our sponsor. So we'll be right back. All right. So that was a message from our sponsor, DTL Productions. So you guys, if you want to advertise and ad on the show, get in contact with us at dtlproduct.net. Send a message to us so we can talk over some things. And again, your ad can be something as simple as a flyer, me just mentioning something of your product or telling folks to go to your website, what have you. So ads are special, $250 for a month. And again, stay tuned for the end of the show to hear the special announcement that will give you huge exposure. So I'm giving too much away, but one of the hints was in that ad if you guys were paying attention. All right, you guys. So let's see who's checking in with me that's not scared to say hello. It's all good. Who do we have here? Yes, indeed, my daughter. Hey, baby girl. She is watching from Atlanta. Mwah. We got Mommy in Love from Vegas. Turn up. I love you as well. Hubby is watching from the man cave. And we have several of you watching as well. So those were the ones that were not scared to say anything. And it's all good if you kind of scared. I get it. So I appreciate your love and your support as always, my Let's Talk fam. Yes, indeed. So you guys, we're going to go ahead and announce our guest who is here to go over some good stuff with us. So let me give him a formal introduction before I bring him on what I call the virtual stage. Okay, there we have it. This is, I'm going to pronounce his name. Hopefully, I don't get it tongue twisted here, but his name is Sarry Ibrahim, and he is a financial specialist. who he's involved with private money lender, real estate investor, and member of the Bank on Yourself organization. He helps business owners, real estate investors, and full-time employees grow safe and predictable wealth regardless of market conditions using a financial strategy that has been around for over 160 years. Sarry started his journey when he was in grad school, completing his MBA. He worked for companies like Allstate, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Cigna, HealthSpring, and Humana before funding Financial Asset Protection, a financial services firm that focuses on one sole concept, the bank on yourself concept. So, you guys, please help me welcome to the virtual stage Sarry Ibrahim. All right. Hey, how are you, Sarry?
Hi, Dre. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us. I'm so excited to have you because, not everybody, well, I'll say this. We really need to get the full skinny of the economy, the best way to invest and everything. So I am so grateful that you reached out to me and, asked if you could come on. Absolutely. My show is about informing and helping educate people on what's going on. So, um, let me start off by asking you, how did you really get involved in this? What really made you want to just take a deep dive into the financial realm, if you will?
Yeah. Thank you for that. So, what made me really want to jump further into the financial services world? It started when I was a senior in high school. I had to take a class called Consumer Economics, and it was a class about very basic financial literacy. It was how to write a check, what is interest, what is a bank, and I really enjoyed that class because I felt like it was very relevant to growing up and having a career, understanding how money works, right? Understanding how basic finances work. So it was at that time that I wanted to make a career out of that, out of financial planning. I wasn't sure what it was called. So I continued into college. I got my MBA. And then after my MBA, I started working for different insurance companies. I worked at like Allstate and like Blue Cross and a couple other insurance companies. And I started to find myself as like this financial coach, right? Talking to people about money, but not so much about the actual money, but more so about them and their relationship with money. So that's what kind of triggered things to go a little bit further. And I was dealing with I was like a healthcare insurance consultant. I would work with people who retired from the city of Chicago, and I would help them choose their Medicare plan and help guide them through that. And during that process, I started to build good relationships with these clients. And one of the clients asked me if I could help him with, he had an estate planning question and a question about life insurance. And I didn't really know the answer to it. So I told him I would do research and I'd get back to him. And then I went to Amazon, believe it or not, to search for books related to that topic. That was just one way I learned reading books. So I searched for that topic. And then a book came up called The Bank on Yourself Revolution by Pamela Yellen. And I read that book. And then that book kind of like led me to starting my business today and to our podcast, Thinking Like a Bank. So I know it was a really long answer, but that's how kind of like piece by piece led me to starting this financial services practice.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. That's an amazing story, especially, when you said you were helping people that are retired. And, you always hear in the media people retire and they don't make the right decisions or they don't put their money in the right places and all of that. So what is the best advice that you would give people right now? You're looking at the housing cost is extremely through the roof, whether you're buying a house or you're renting. Credit card interest rates are super duper high. What's the best advice that you would give to your average middle class working individual in terms of what's the best way to handle their money right now?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's a good observation. So, um, take a step back, right? Like, so inflation, like, what does that mean? It means that the cost of things, like as you mentioned, go up. Like, particularly houses, the cost of houses, rent prices have gone up. So, if you're just saving like ordinary money just in a bank account, that money is going to lose value, right? Because the things outside of the bank are going up. So the advice I would have is number one, like understand what inflation is and understand like it's almost like they call it like a silent tax. So it's like something that costs you money, indirectly costs you money. So that's number one. And number two, kind of figure out a way to like hedge against inflation or block against that risk of inflation. So the way typically to do that is you would invest your money into different places. I recommend you invest money into things that go up with inflation. So a
Mm.
lot of people, even though it's really bad, like inflation and houses going up and rental prices going up, a lot of people profited from this spike and are continuing to do so because they've invested into assets that appreciate in value, and they appreciate drastically during inflationary periods like right now. So that's what I would recommend. I would recommend look at some investments where when inflation happens, they go up in value. So you end up making more money instead of losing to that silent tax.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. I live in the Atlanta area, and just driving around the city, I saw a suburb, brand new suburb, building homes brand new from the ground up. And guess what? They're not for sale. They're renting them.
Oh
And
wow.
the rent is ridiculous. I mean, for Georgia, $3,000 a month for Georgia is high. And I'm just like, this builder, I mean, I don't know. So, in your opinion, is that a smart move for the builder to rent, or is it? What's your thought on that? Are you seeing more of that in the Chicago area as well?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot more renters nowadays because they don't want to buy at a high price. Plus, interest rates have gone up. They've
Hmm.
almost doubled in the last year. So you can imagine somebody's mortgage payment could expect not expect to double because once you lock in a mortgage, typically it's fixed. But for new people coming in to buy a house, it's their anticipated projected monthly payment is probably going to double because of the interest rate. So they've decided to rent instead of buy. But even with renting, it's gone up too, and it's even there's limited inventory from the standpoint of like the contractor, the person building the um, real estate.
Hmm.
It depends on what they want to do, right? Sometimes they build condos and they sell those condos, and sometimes they build apartments and they sell those apartments. I think from the perspective of the investor and the person who's going to own that property, I think renting is a little bit more profitable than the condos and then selling them, because with rentals you could keep renting them, and then you can even increase the rent property every like year. And if you look through the leases, especially these like high rise buildings, like I'm in Chicago, so we have a lot of high rise buildings, and same with like New York and the new metropolitan area. The leases in those apartments, they go up every year like 3% or 5% automatically. It says that in the lease. So from their standpoint, not from the renter standpoint of
Hmm.
course, but from the real estate investors, the owners, it's good for them because it hedges against inflation. It goes up. So it's almost like they're not losing money to inflation. So, and that's something too. So like, a lot of people can get involved into real estate investing without having to build like a multi-million dollar apartment building. And a lot of people think that like, well, I don't have millions of dollars, so I'm not going to get into real estate. There are ways you can get into real estate with as little as $5,000 to invest, maybe even less than that sometimes, like micro investments where you and 500 other people are putting in, you know, small amounts between $5,000 and $10,000, and then with that you can contribute to something much bigger with other people. With it's almost like crowdfunding.
Yeah. Wow, that's so interesting. So let me, and I want you to get more in detail on that, but let me go back to the housing question. So say for example, in Atlanta, the houses have gone up tremendously. Say for example, someone purchased their house for, I don't know, almost close to 400, right? In Atlanta, that's a good price. And then since all of this stuff has happened, the house is now valued at, let's say, I don't know, 700. Would you advise that individual to sell the house, cash out the profit that they're going to get from the sale, and go rent? Or if they go buy another house, it's just as high as the one they sold. Like, how do you do that and get over and make money with something like that?
Yeah, so it depends on how much debt they have, right? Like if they bought that $400,000 with like a mortgage, and
Mm-hmm.
then it went up to $700,000, I would want to find out like how much debt they have on that. Let's just say they have no debt at all. Then I'd recommend they could do a cash out refinance depending on their employment situation.
Mm-hmm.
They could do a cash out refinance. They could probably take out like 75% to 80% of the 700,000, assuming they have no debt on it already. Then they could go and buy another house or even an investment property and then rent that out, and then create like a profit between between the amount of money on the new loan they have
Mm-hmm.
and the rental income they're earning. So they could actually turn their house into an investment, not that actual house, or they could rent out their house and then go buy another house. So there's a lot of options that they have,
Okay.
and that's one of the benefits of real estate is that it's like when you have equity sitting in your house, you there's a lot you can do, right? You can leverage it, you can borrow against it, you can get a home equity line of credit, you can sell it. You have a lot more options. Renting, I'm not going to say that 100% of the time renting is not good, because it depends on people's situation, right? Like if they're going to move somewhere and they're only going to be in that city for like a year or 2 years, I think renting is a smarter idea than buying. Again, it's hard to generalize, right? It depends on the situations, but overall, I think that's one of the advantages of buying and putting money into real estate. As long as it's not like 2008, you'll be
Oh
fine
yeah.
in real estate, and it always continues to incline, and it always continues to grow, especially especially safer asset classes in real estate. What that means is, like, in 2008, in the real estate when the real estate crash happened, multifamily apartment buildings weren't as affected as like commercial properties were, or like single family homes,
Oh.
because people still had to live somewhere, they still had to pay rent. So that was kind of like almost like a hedge against that type of risk. So it's really important to understand like the different types of real estate asset classes, and then also their impact in a lower economic time, or a lower in a downward economic condition.
Oh, wow. That is interesting that you mentioned that. In that case, you're right. Renting is probably a better thing to do. God forbid we get to 2008 again. Oh my goodness. So what do you think about failure? What is your definition of failure when you talk about investing and all of the real estate investing? What do you consider failure?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of my favorite questions to be asked, right? Like, what is failure? So, like, a lot of people would think of failure, and even myself, I used to think of failure as like almost like a dead end. Like, you did not meet that expectation, and therefore, like, it wasn't in your favor. That's kind of like the harsh way to put it, right? But then as I started to read more books, I read more a lot. I've been reading a lot of books about mindset and entrepreneurship and real estate investing and owning my own business. And failure is completely, I think it's a complete opposite of that. Failure is just an indication that you need to pivot in a different direction. It's also an indication that something is working, right? So, like, I'll
Mm,
give you an example. Like, let's just say you had um, two people, right? One person invested money into something and they lost money, and the other
okay.
person never invested in anything and they just had a job and saved money. Well, the person who did invest and lost has an advantage over the person who didn't. And what is that advantage? It's investment experience. So
Mm,
it's really important to gain experience, especially in business and investing. It's not so much of just a one move where you make it. If it works, there's more that goes into it, as far as like doing research and gaining investment experience. Robert Kiyosaki talks about this in his book Rich Dad Poor Dad. He says that when you're young, you have to invest, not necessarily just to make more money, or to grow your money, but to gain investment experience. So you
mm,
need to gain experience, even if the investments you're involved in are not necessarily profitable, or they're not necessarily, or even in some situations there are losses. You're gaining investment experience that you can carry forward into future years. So it's really important that you practice investing and you get the hang of it, because it's not just like you read a book and then you learn how to invest. It's a practical approach, not so much of a theoretical approach. You can't just you should read and you should do research and you should consult with professionals, but at the end of the day, those things are not going to generate more money for you. You have to invest, even if it means failure. And then with the failure, you're going to gain experience from that, and then that experience is going to help you invest in other things, and you'll now learn more about investments. It's the same thing with like real estate, right? Like, when you talk to experienced real estate investors who own like hundreds of properties, they almost all of them say like they lost money on their first two or three deals. They had to like borrow money just to cover the debts on some of those properties, but it's okay. They figure out a way to come out and solve that problem and then move on. And then when you're in that situation where you have to solve a problem to get out of a problem and then to pivot and then become profitable again, it changes the way you think, and it kind
mm,
of expands your mind to thinking in different ways. And that's what's really important, is that you want that kind of experience where you're doing different things outside of just books, outside of reading articles, outside of podcasts. Even though all those things are really important, you
mhm.
still need the practical experience.
Wow, that is such an interesting way that you put it. I totally agree. You learn from your mistakes, so to
Mhm.
speak. So, oh wow, that's amazing. I like that. I like that. I gotta make sure to constantly remind myself of that. Not that I'm failing, but if I
Yeah.
do, hey, you got to learn from it, right?
Yep.
So, oh my gosh. So, the whole thing of the show tonight is think like a bank, right? So you got to tell me, and that comes from your website, your YouTube channel, everything. Can you give us some more insight into what do you mean when you say think like a bank?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you look at, for example, like the amount of things we finance, like cars, credit cards, mortgage, homes, student loans, pretty much every part of our lives in some way is being financed.
Hmm.
And so, in other words, there's a bank there, and on average, one third of our money goes to servicing debt. So, if we make $100,000 a year, for example, about 33,000 of that is going to service your mortgage, car notes, student loans, credit cards, personal loans, other types of debts you have. So that means that we're indirectly like working for banks. Banks are, sitting back collecting principal and interest from everyone, who in some way, shape, or form. So there's a thinking process behind that. If you look closely, like, when you think of like real estate, banks are typically not involved in real estate. They typically just fund the mortgages, but they're not really in thinking about owning the properties or dealing with tenants or dealing with the buyers. They have the realtors that do that, that sell the properties, and then they have the mortgage parts or the mortgage branches that deal with the financing part. But they don't want to be involved in the asset management. And same with like cars, like banks don't really want to be involved in the business of cars. They want to be more involved in the business of selling loans and selling money. So that opens up like this whole philosophical thing where it's, why is that, right? Like, why is it? There's a thinking process behind that, and the way it's a very efficient way of making growing wealth. And other things too is banks are really good with like saving on taxes and growing wealth in inflationary times and recessions and things like that. So there's a lot to learn from there. So we started the podcast called Thinking Like a Bank to uncover what banks do. And we brought on bankers, we brought on accountants, lawyers, financial advisors, all types of professionals who in some way, shape, or form understand how a bank works. And then we translate that into like easy to understand information. So that way anybody can understand it. You don't have to be, in the banking industry. You don't have to have a degree in finance, but anybody could apply them. Even if you're, a school teacher, or a police officer, or you own your own bakery, or whatever it is that you do, you can apply the principles of thinking of a bank, or thinking like a bank. And that's kind of the point of it, is that when you do apply those principles, again, you don't have to be in a financial services business, but when you do apply those principles, it does impact your business, and it changes the way you operate. It changes the way you operate when when you're thinking long term, you're thinking of leverage, and you're thinking of risk management and saving on taxes. It changes the way you run your business now. For example, let's say you're like really, really good at cooking, like you're a chef, you're really, really passionate about cooking, you're very good at it, and then you start a restaurant, you open a restaurant. Now, I hate to say it, but the success of the restaurant isn't going to be mostly focused on how good the food is. It has a big part of it, but a bigger part of the business is the financials, how you manage the money, how you manage money coming in, how you manage money coming out, paying your taxes, paying employees, borrowing money, raising capital. All those components are going to be far more important than the food itself. Look at, for example, McDonald's. McDonald's, the food is whatever, but the business model is the elites, right? Other companies who are not even in the restaurant business model McDonald's and want to become like it because of its business model. So the financial parts of the business are far more important than the underlying parts of it, the subject matter, like the type of business it is.
Wow, that's deep. That's deep. Definitely. Think like a bank. I love it. I love it. Think like a bank and act like a bank, the whole nine. You're right. Because when you think about, credit cards, it's like you mentioned earlier, you get a credit card statement and maybe your balance is, I don't know, just throw a figure out. Let's say your balance is $300, but they're going to make way more off of you than the $300 just based on interest charges alone. So, like you said, think like a bank instead of getting caught up in the actual item itself or the real estate or the product. Yes, yes. So hopefully the Let's Talk fam is listening to that. You guys make sure you chime in your questions for Sarah to answer as we go a little bit further
Yeah,
into this. So I got some more questions for
sure.
you.
Mhm.
So how do you help real estate investors or small business owners? I know you got into it a little bit earlier about think like a bank, but you talked about how each person could put in $5,000, a couple of you to into a apartment building type of thing. Can you get more in depth into that when you mentioned that earlier?
Yeah, so typically, I would say there have been a lot of changes since 2017, since the Jobs Act, which changed a lot of the ways that people could raise money and how and the investments that people could be involved in. So a long time ago, in order for you to be involved in like a big investment, you have to be an accredited investor. That means you have to have a net worth of at least $1 million, and you have to typically, if you're married and filing jointly, you have to make at least $300,000 a year for the last 2 years. So we're talking about a small percentage of people, right? Like almost like I guess the top 1%, not necessarily, but the top of a smaller percentage of people fall into that category. So what they did was they passed the act in 2017, which opened something called like Regulation A funding or Reg A funding, and what that means is that anybody now can get involved if it's an investment that's a Reg A investment. Anybody can get involved in that investment, and these brackets usually there are $1,000 increments or $5,000 increments. And then from there, they would invest in real estate there's many types of businesses out there. There's a lot of websites out there right now. If you just Google like REGA space A, like Apple, and then
Mhm.
offerings, you can find businesses that are raising money, and you don't have to be accredited, nor do you have to put like 50 or $100,000 in. You could do as little as 1,000 or 5,000, whatever the requirements are. So this opens a door now, and it opens a door for it opens the door for both parties, for the people who want to invest money, and then
Mhm.
also for the businesses who want to raise money. Because you have to think like before there was crowdfunding and like these social media platforms you could raise money. Prior to that, the only people who could do that were typically Wall Street, like people who investment bankers who represented big companies who can then help issue shares and sell to like raise capital that way. But that now it has changed. Now small businesses could raise money, so it's a two-way street. You're helping people, you're helping small businesses raise money, and you're also helping yourself too by being able to invest into these deals at a smaller amount, smaller risk too, because it's small. There's still risk involved, but smaller risk because there's little control from Wall Street and other big parties. So you're investing directly into small businesses, and there's also real estate divisions. Like there are some real estate deals where you can invest like $5,000, and it's typically like a 1 year or 2 year holding period, which is really good too because a lot of other real estate deals require like a 5 to 7 year holding period, whereas the Reg A, the smaller ones, are like a 1 to 2 year holding period. And I've seen cases where people put like 5,000 into it, and they could double their money in like 2 years. Again, there's risk involved, of course, but that is something you could typically see in real estate, investing in real estate. There's a website called fundrise.com.
Okay.
You could invest also in like it's very similar crowdfunding in real estate. So I would check that out. I would learn a lot from Fundrise and understand how they're probably the biggest player when it
Mhm.
comes to raising money for real estate smaller deals. But there's also other ones out there that I think are a little bit more lucrative. And another way to find these deals is working with an accountant or working with a financial advisor, somebody who's kind of involved with networking and connecting with other people. Sometimes these companies are not all over the internet because they don't want to be. They're kind of like referral only base. They're still licensed. They still have public information disclosing who they are and how they operate. Of course, they're protecting investors, but you can find a lot of good opportunities when you network with people. So that's another big tip too, is like network with ask your accountant, ask your financial advisor. Your lawyers are a really good source too. If they handle business matters, they'll know which businesses are raising money and which businesses they can potentially refer you to. So I would talk to a lot of professional service people who help people with their accounting and legal stuff.
Wow, that's great advice. That is awesome advice. Would you say that the safest investment right now would be real estate? You know, you hear all these different platforms and organizations like Bitcoin and all these other different things, and you just kind of wonder, there's so many moving pieces to that. You know, I once heard a saying that the best thing that you can invest in is real estate and land because God isn't making any more, right?
Yeah.
So is that still does that still hold true to today?
I think for sure. I think real estate is up there. It's up there as far as one of the safest investments. Of course, it's still like every investment still has its exposure. It's just a matter of how much exposure, right? So like if you compared real estate, investing in real estate compared to investing in stocks, real estate would win. Real estate would be safer. If you
Okay.
compared investing in real estate versus like foreign currency, real estate. So in a lot of situations, real estate is going to come out a little bit safer depending on how what kind of real estate it is. I think the safest in my opinion, multifamily. So this is just apartment buildings, residential apartment buildings. I think those are going to be the safest compared to like commercial, industrial, and other types of asset classes.
Okay. Okay. I'm just putting up comments from the live audience and the things
Yeah.
that they're saying. They're getting a kick out of this. They really are learning. And there's somebody says she's starting real estate school next week. So this is good stuff because you always hear, well, I won't say you always hear. Sometimes unless you really go out there and you look for it and you search for it, you don't get these tips as often, right?
Mhm.
Unless you go and listen for the podcast or something like that. So you heard about President Biden, letting student loan debt
Yeah.
go and credit cards and all that. Oh my goodness. Give me your take on all that. What's your thoughts on all of that?
Yeah, so I'm not big into politics. So
Right.
but I do like that. I do love that. I have a lot of student loans myself. So
Hmm.
I think there's two parts of it. There's one part where everyone can get $10,000 forgiven, and then if
Okay.
you had I think a Pell Grant, then you can get another 10,000, so 20,000. I think that's wonderful. I think that's really good. They've made enough money off of student loans, and that's something people I think haven't looked at it like from a different perspective. Is the way that back to thinking like a bank.
Hmm.
So the way that banks operate is like they'll loan out like $1 billion, and then even if half the people pay it back or whatever their math is, even if half of the people pay it back, they've still made $500 million, and the same is true with student loans. So over the years, colleges and universities have been issuing debt. They've been selling courses and selling their programs, you know, all beyond billions, maybe I think 10 or 20 billion dollars worth of student loan. I think it's $1 trillion.
Oh
So,
my
much more than that. So $1 trillion. And even if they get back like 10% of that or less or 5% of that, they've still, it was still very lucrative. It's still very profitable. So it's not like the fact that everybody's going to get $10,000 off their student loans is going to like damage the economy. No, it's not. So I
goodness.
think it's a really good thing.
Okay.
Again, I'm not political, right? I just think
Right,
that
right. Absolutely.
yeah, I think this one particular thing is really good that they're gonna knock off student loans. Again, a lot of people do have a lot more than that. Like I work with a lot of clients who have, who are like doctors and lawyers who have like over hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loans. So it helps, right? It helps if you can knock that down because it's a very big debt that people have, and it's something that you would never think about. Like a lot of people are completely debt free except for student loans. Like that's their only
Mm.
debt they have. So it's
Wow.
kind of, it's sad in a way that we have to go through that. But at the same time, I understand it's a business. I understand the thinking like a bank process. And if we can knock off like 10 or $20,000 off of that thing, that's a wonderful thing to take care of, to take advantage of. And I think more of that should come. So that's my
Yeah.
that's my opinion on it.
And I totally understand your position in terms of political. So that was not definitely my angle. But I think about when I went to college many moons ago, I had to pay off all my student debt. So, but it'll help programs like my daughter. She just
Yeah.
graduated from college not too long ago. And that I agree with you. I think it's good. One of the viewers said they like student loan forgiveness. They hope they don't cap so we can go back to college. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good, definitely something awesome. Awesome. So as we come to a close here, Sari, what kind of advice would you give anyone that's watching? Any last words that you want to say that you want to inform people of?
Yeah, just take action, right? Don't be worried. Like it's like do your homework, do your research, work with professionals like your accountant, your lawyer. Make sure the investments you're getting to are legitimate investments, good investments. But at the same time, you have to have that like moment where you just continue and don't hesitate because I guess it's always going to be a win-win. Either you invest in something and then you come out ahead and that was a win, or if it doesn't, or if you break even, then you gain the investment experience that you can now recycle that investment experience into another investment. So always take action, right? Don't be worried. Always take action, and then have a good team. Have a very solid team, right? Have, you're somebody who's experienced in real estate investing. Have a good accountant. Have a good lawyer. Have like good professionals near you who can give you advice and help mentor you and coach you. That's going to take you a really long way too, because we do things according to, not according to, but influenced heavily by the people around us. So
Mm-hmm.
if we're surrounded by people who are really experienced with real estate, really experienced with investments, we're gonna end up being like that. We're gonna learn from them. We're gonna end up, so put yourselves in those situations. Learn from people like that, and it's a really big part. Most of the books I've read about real estate investing and business and investing in general talk about that. Surround yourself with people who are really successful.
Absolutely. I love that. Oh my gosh, I tell my kids that, or my adult children, that all the time. Go in a room where you can learn from somebody. Don't stay in the room where, it's just the same old, but go learn from some people. Definitely. I love that advice. So, how can they get in touch with you? How can they learn about your products, your services? If they want to ask you questions, I've got your
Yeah.
information scrolling at the bottom. Is that the best way folks can reach out to you?
Yeah, this is perfect. Yeah, finassetprotection.com. You can also go to thinkinglikeabank.com. I could type that in the chat right now. Thinking like a
Oh, it's
bank.
it's scrolling down at the bottom.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, definitely. Well, I love it. I thank you so much for coming on, because this platform is to inform, definitely to let people know the right decisions to make. So let me just see if there's any questions in the comments, to see if anybody, and people always go back. Most of the viewers watch the show after it's been uploaded. So if you don't mind, go back and just take a look at the comments and see if anybody has any questions. Everyone is just saying, some people saying they already applied for their loan to be forgiven. And oh yes, somebody said something about they gave a tour of 18 millionaires. They took 18 millionaires on a tour of the investments of the city. Now that is impressive. That is impressive to see that they've got that much investments in the city. And I think Richard is in Detroit. So that's huge. That is huge. That's something that, I would love to get to at some point, just invest, because here in Atlanta, you've got all these mid-rise, high-rise apartment buildings. And last weekend I was touring one. I'm looking for a relative, they were curious about an apartment. So they're beautiful, they're amazing, but $2,000 and $3,000 a month is like, oh my gosh. But for the investor or the owner of that building, that's huge. They're making out tons of money, so
Yep.
definitely real estate is the way to go. Well, I appreciate you so much for coming on Let's Talk, sir. You're welcome here
Thank
anytime.
you.
I thank you for your wealth of knowledge, and you guys definitely reach out to him if you have questions. And just definitely want to say thank you once again. And you have a great evening, sir. Oh, and you know what? Do me one last favor. I
Yeah.
want to make sure I didn't butcher your name. Please pronounce it for me.
Oh, yeah, thanks. So it's Sarry Ibrahim.
Asari Ibrahim. Okay, I was close on the
Yeah,
last
yeah.
name.
Yeah, you were close. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Siri. You have a great night, and I will be talking soon.
You too. Thanks.
Bye
Bye-bye.
bye. That was good information, you guys. I love it when guests can come on and inform and share their wealth of knowledge for you. So, you guys definitely make sure you reach out to him if you have any questions. He's going to put some information in the comment section, but we've got to do better with our money instead of just blowing it on material things that depreciate, right? We got to do better. Definitely got to do better. Okay. So, thank you, Sarry Ibrahim, for coming on Let's Talk. So for those of you that tuned in the beginning or tuning in and want to know what is this announcement this girl or this lady is going to make, let me just get into it with you guys. Let me just share something that I think is very near and dear to my heart. Okay, there you have it for those of you that see that there. So basically, I am proud to announce that Detail Productions, which is the company of Let's Talk with author Dre Lett, we just inked a deal with Roku TV. Yes, Roku TV. It will be under the umbrella of the MJ Own Network, who is another minority owned woman who owns her own network. So Roku TV has 80 million viewers. Huge. enormously huge. So starting October 4th, all Let's Talk with author Dre Lett shows can be viewed on Roku TV, the MJ owned network. We will continue to tape the show with a live Facebook audience every Friday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But the show will be shown on the Roku TV television station with more information to come. Currently, we are accepting sponsors and ads starting at $250 a month. Yes, you heard it right. A special price for $250 a month. So, as a sponsor, you can have your flyer, you can have a product mention. Detail Productions can help you produce an ad, whatever. So, for $250 a month with a 3 month commitment. So, send a message to the show via dtlproduct.net, and somebody will get back with you. I'm super honored to accept this opportunity. I'm looking forward to soaring high and above the clouds and beyond. I thank God for this opportunity because I believe God is using me to inform, inspire, and motivate the masses during these challenging times and beyond. So I'm super excited. There was several other companies wanting to sign me, but I chose this network. So I'm super excited. And I'm seeing everybody say congratulations and all that good stuff. So if you guys are my virtual live audience, my Let's Talk fam, you guys are going with me in that we will definitely tape all the shows live here on Facebook, and you will go with me over to Roku TV. So you get somebody said the new Oprah, too funny. So you guys, thank you so much for your love and support. I'm super excited. So that's on October 4th. So anyways, as we close out the show, and I truly, oh my gosh, I'm just feeling so amazed. That is truly a blessing from God, because who knew that the show would go from, I never told anyone this, only a few people knew this, but I started this show on my kitchen counter. Yes, I did. To go all the way to a in-home studio, and now to be on Roku TV. So, oh my gosh, super, super blessed and grateful to God. So as we close out the show, I want to leave you guys with a positive thought. And the positive thought is this: know your worth. Never settle for less than you deserve. Okay. And that is an anonymous. I found that on the internet. When I saw it, I said, oh, I want to use that. Again, know your worth. Never settle for less than you deserve. And the other quote I want to share with you guys is: life is 10% of what you experience and 90% of how you respond to it, right? So all the things that I went through with the show, starting on the kitchen counter and having people that wanted to be within the show with me, and then they backed out, all the different things. Basically, no matter what you go through, whether it's sickness, illness, divorce, job loss, whatever it may be, just know that life is 10% of what you experience and 90% of how you respond to it. So you guys, keep your head up, keep pushing forward, and never, ever, ever, ever give up, because you got to stay constantly prayed up, and you just know that God's got you. All right. So another thing I want to share with you guys, as I say every week, do one good thing for one person each day, and you can affect 365 lives. Know that if no one's told you that they love you, know that I love you. I'm super excited that you guys will be going on this journey with me. Stay tuned for next week. We will have the show live on Facebook. The shows will remain here until October 4th. So I love you guys. Be safe out there. Have a great weekend. And with those words, I'm out.